joining with eminent film critics of India, national award winner, and the two beautiful ladies over there. And the topic is how critics nurture good cinema. So, sir, my first question to you: do we really need critics? Right now, there is a democratization of media, and everyone is critic on Facebook, Insta, and uh, many platforms. So, what is the role of critic in today's world?
Thank you for this invitation, and really happy to talk to students about cinema. For the question, like there is this famous saying that everyone in the world have two jobs. One is their own job. There may be a grocer or a butcher or a banker. Other film is film critic. Other job is film critic. Everybody is a film critic. So everybody has an opinion on films. They like or dislike films for various reasons. So film criticism is something that is universal. Like everybody does it. Only that, do we need critics at all? Is a question that would take us to this another question of what do we mean by criticism. One thing is, like, we have to actually, if you look at the current scene of film writing in India or response to films in India, like you can see a lot of instant responses. People are actually posting on Facebook or Twitter from the theatre itself. So there is, in a way, influencing film marketing or the response to the film, and a lot of producers and directors are scared of it. There is a kind of the whole film scene, film market, or is in a way influenced by this instant criticism and comments on cinema. So one thing is, like, how do we actually separate these kinds of comments and immediate responses? Then you have maybe, like, it is a dying art. Still there are reviewers who do for a weekly column in a paper or a magazine. They watch a film, they think about it, and they do a short review. Okay. Then you have film criticism as it, like where you have a longer analytical piece on films. Then you have film studies, which is a huge academic area linked with cultural studies, and it's a huge area where a lot of departments in universities are running film studies courses. So actually we have to separate all these. So do we actually consider these kinds of social media responses to film, immediate response, instantaneous responses, which gets viral true, but how do you actually account for it? Do we consider it as film criticism as such? As for me, I think that is an area of study, ethnographic, sociological study of these responses. It's very curious ways in which these responses are generated, sometimes engineered, because all the filmmakers and producers, they themselves have social media handles. So it's not that people are responding, as some industrial film producers would like to say. We are being for instance, there is a 2 years back there was a case in Kerala High Court banning. They were actually, the Producers Association was asking the High Court to ban online criticism for 1 week or so 3 weeks or whatever. So this is actually a kind of ban on freedom of expression. You go to a hotel, you don't like an idli, you can say I didn't like it. Like, it's just like that. No? So do we take those kinds of responses as criticism? Is my question. Secondly, it's a fact that many of these online responses, instant response, have their own, have generated a kind of market. Many of the reviewers and bloggers have created a kind of individual style. So many people follow them not that they will watch or not watch a film because of their response, but to actually see them. That itself has become a kind of a medium, where people are actually enjoying, or they want to know how somebody talks about cinema, not that they're potential viewers of cinema. So I think we have to look at it much more closely, whether we should actually, for me, criticism is something that will help the viewer to get a deeper understanding of the film. Or when you read a review, you get to see some of the facts or some of the layers of that film, which I didn't notice. Even when I read somebody else, like when I read Anna, or when you read somebody else, else, you tend to notice certain aspects of the film which you actually didn't notice when you watched. Yeah, retrospectively. There are also, for instance, when I watch a film, I would like to know what would be a feminist take on that film. I would like to know what would be Dalit take on that film, which is, the different kinds of perspectives of the film are produced by critics. They think on it, they have certain kind of way of looking at the films, analyzing the film, some language in which they write it. All these create film criticism, a very, very important and very vibrant field of activity. So I think if you look at criticism like that, it's still valid. It still stays, but the problem is like the attention span of the readers and viewers. Because we are all used to short messages, Twitter, 120 words or 100 words, and also reels, which couldn't go more than 40 seconds. So if for a kind of readership or viewership of such short attention span, how do you communicate to them is, I think, the major criticism that a critic is facing now.
So, but my question to you is, what is your process to nurture good cinema? What is good cinema according to a film critic? What is the characteristic of good cinema, and how, as a critic, you work on it, or you write your piece, critical piece on any cinema?
So, thank you for inviting me for this talk, and thank you the students for their participation. And thank you, Bandare ji. So, what is a good cinema? That is itself is a very complicated question, since it depends on one's perspective, how one person is considering certain or trying to see certain aspects in a particular film. But of course, there are certain very visible features that can be taken into account while we discuss about a good cinema. So first of all, stylistics elements are there. The proper user since it was started, the film was started as an invention. So the other aspects were not associated, or other purpose were not associated with cinema. Initially, it was just an invention, and later on, it became a tool for sometimes for social criticism, or sometimes or later on it becomes an artistic form, or which is counted on the basis of the use of different elements in a film. So whenever we look at the we consider a film as a good film, first of all, the stylistic elements that is used in a film, that should be of good quality, or with deeper meaning that we have to observe. And in addition to that, the thematic line should be themes should be very contemporary, maybe, or maybe something which need to be brought in front of the audience, or need to be analyzed, or need to be projected. So that kind of thing, if the film is based on that kind of topic or that kind of theme, then only we can say that this is a good cinema. Or apart from that, most of the time what happens, the directors or filmmakers make it as a good cinema, but the audience may not take or consider it as good cinema, because it always depends on their own perspective. So on the basis of that, we cannot say that this particular movie is good for me, but for you it might not be. And regarding how I interpret a movie, then I mainly look at the theme of the movie, then the elements, how the director tried to establish, by using those elements, how the director is trying to establish whatever he or she wants to portray, how it has been placed in a proper way, and then and how the audience is responding, or how this film will affect the reflect the situation, contemporary issues, or how it affects the audience mindset. That also matters a lot while I discuss about the movie. And of course, that how the directors is trying to portray the issues in a very innovative way. It's an every shot how he or she is using, or he or she is depicting the issues to what to the how deeply. So that is also another very important aspect that I used to look whenever I criticize or whenever I analyze the movie. And another important aspect is that film is not only a medium of entertainment, but it affects the, or it is always a package of different ideological concepts. So that the film not only entertain us, or not it may, though it is it not always made for to gain money or for some financial purpose, but it always is always have certain influence on the audience. And most of the time what we have seen, that though we enjoy the movie during that moment, but certain aspects we keep it in our mind, or it influence in our own lifestyle or own thinking. So that's why while making the movie, the directors should have taken into account those issues, that this might go beyond the entertainment. So that aspect, the director has to be very consciously or very carefully those themes or those issues should be incorporated. So that is all what I can express at this point.
And what is your process of analyzing the good films? What is good film for you, and how you analyze it? Because you are writing from so many years for so many publications, and your recent controversy with Tamanna. I want you to narrate all that controversy. But before that, what is your process of watching cinema to analyze it?
First of all, I don't think there's any universal definition of what's good cinema and bad cinema. Each individual obviously has their own interpretation of a film, and even if you find two human beings love a film, you will not find their reasons for having loved that film exactly the same, because our way of consuming a film is entirely dependent on the sum total of our life experiences, our identity, our background, our mood in that moment in time, the choices we've made in life, etc., etc. So there's that. As far as processes go, I think it's very important that first of all, if you're a film critic, you must first watch the film unburdened by the task that you have before you to analyze it. So I do not sit, and this is not prescriptive, I'm not saying everybody else should follow my methods, but when I watch a film, I don't sit and take notes throughout the film. As soon as an interval comes, you'll find me quickly taking down notes with pen and paper or on my cell phone, but I don't take notes during the film, because I feel like every filmmaker has inserted, sometimes just a glance, sometimes just one moment that lasted like 1 second could change the meaning of a scene. And if I'm looking down and I've missed that moment, I've lost it. And this doesn't apply just to crime thrillers. It applies to everything. It could be a romance. And I feel like every film, even those that are dismissed as being mindless, there is no such thing actually as a mindless film. Even the silliest film has beyond the entertainment, it has its politics and its messaging, and I want to give that film the respect that it deserves, because someone somewhere spent a few years of their life on it, even if I hate the film. And I also always operate as an utter optimist when I'm watching a film. So far, I've never been able to walk out of a film that I consider bad. I always feel like maybe in the next scene it'll turn. Maybe it will become slightly better in the next scene. So I always sit till the end. Again, this is not prescriptive. I'm not saying everybody should do this, but if you're a critic and you have walked out of the film, you should be truthful, in my opinion, and write in your review that you found it so insufferable that you walked out. Now, depending on how much time I have, who I am writing for, what my deadline is, then there is a certain process. So for instance, there was a time when I was doing weekly reviews, week in and week out for First Post. I would watch even previews that were held were usually on Thursday evenings. I would watch the film, make notes during the interval. I would be making notes all the way back home. And I would have sometimes just 2-3 hours. And by the way, I did not like that. I did not enjoy that at all. Just 2-3 hours to churn out the review. Which is why every filmmaker I meet, I always try to influence them to please have early screenings and send out preview screeners, because if you want your film to be given the respect that you think it deserves, then you should want the critic to have time to think about not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it. Now, if it is, last year Himal South Asian had published a review that I wrote of Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge to mark 30 years of DDLJ. They also published a review that I wrote of Sholi. Now, obviously, any reader who's reading those two reviews must know that I was not a film critic who wrote those reviews at that moment in time when the film came out. I'm not old enough to have been a film critic in 1975. Apart from that, I mean, I did watch Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge when it was released, and I remember feeling, I was very angry with that film, okay? Himal South Asian approached me at the beginning of last year and said, would you like to write about these two films? And I said, I'm not sure I have anything new to add to Sholay, but DDLJ has been stewing in my mind for 30 years and I have so much anger that I want to put it down in an article. But because this was not, Venkateshwaran was distinguishing between shorter takes and deeper criticism, etc., because there was no rush over this and they respected the process. And I also for me, it was such an enriching experience because I rewatched the film towards the beginning of 2025 and I just watched it with some family members, no notes, nothing. Then a few weeks later, I sat down and watched it with a notebook. I made mental notes, but I sat down and I noted down counters. At this moment, this happened, this scene I want to mention. Then quotes of dialogues, etc. And then after I wrote the first draft of my critique, I rewatched the film to see if I had skipped anything I meant to. Also, I found with each viewing, I noticed something new. And while I had a discomfort and an anger with this film in 1997 when it was released, I was able to articulate those reasons much better now than the me that was 30 years younger. That comes with experience, that comes with maturity, but also there has been a passage of time. To my mind, the film has impacted the history of India and has also reflected contemporary history in many ways. It was a milestone, not just because it was a massive box office success, but also because I think it was part of a moment that was changing the course of Hindi cinema in particular, not Indian cinema as a whole, Hindi cinema in particular, and it was reflecting the politics of the time and a certain play it safe attitude that Hindi cinema was adopting in the 1990s, post-1992. So there was all of that. And so that was a far more in-depth. Now, I can also write a book on Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. If I had watched the film in 97 and written a review 3 hours later, even if I was this person with 30 years of additional experience, it would still not have had that quality and depth that a review on which I have spent time has. But I take film criticism very seriously, but that doesn't mean that I am a boring person or that I write boringly. I'm not, I promise you. But that you can't take yourself too seriously, right? I just feel like people think, this is a silly film, why are you spending so much time on it? But boss, that silly film made 1,000 crores. Are the masses some people saw it, isn't it important for you to chronicle what was your reaction to it? Is it the same as the public's, or is your reaction different? Nobody else. What I feel about this film at this moment in time is going into archives. Students in future will have, film students will, this is reading material for them, right? They may watch the film, but they are watching it 10 years from now, 20 years from now. We are people in this moment in time formally critiquing the works of art we are seeing now, and that moment in time makes it unique. So I think that, of course, there are social media commentators, and I don't look down on people who give social media commentary at all. That's a public reaction, and but that reaction is not something new. It's just that when we were younger, the public didn't have spaces on which to express their opinions. Now they have spaces, so those opinions go viral. But public always reacted. So I don't think that film criticism is ever going to die out. It is always necessary to, formal critiques are different from the spontaneous public response. And we have to value and respect each without, to my mind, without thinking, oh, so-and-so is the public, so who are they? Unko kya pata hai? Public sab janta hai. But it's their perspective, right? And we all can learn from each other. Oh, also I want to add, because you introduced us as Venkateshwaran, the national award winner, and two beautiful women.
Yeah.
I want to add that we are award winners,
Yes.
and do you think Venkateshwaran is not handsome? So, because Venkati said that for feminist critique, he reads me, I want you to know this is my feminist critique of your introduction.
He is a handsome guy in the entire room.
Yeah.
Okay. My second question to you, they are a film study student and they are media student, and your recent controversy about Tamanna's statement.
Oh, yeah.
So I want you to narrate all that episode to them so they can understand the process, how stars are taking us seriously, and they are commenting on us very fantastically and misquoting us. And your fantastic piece, I read that piece, Rape of Avantika. So I want you to tell them what was the controversy all about.
I'll give you two examples actually. So you know what? There are filmmakers in this hall, but that is okay. We will all speak the truth to each other. The only filmmakers who will tell you that film criticism is rubbish and they don't care about it are filmmakers who never get positive reviews. And even the people who say that film criticism is rubbish are really just angry because those rubbish film critics, the critics they called rubbish, didn't give them positive reviews. Before I answer the question about Tamanna Bhatia and this article I wrote in 2015 called The Rape of Avantika, I'll tell you about, I wrote a book called The Adventures of an Intrepid Film Critic. Now in 2000, and I was working on it in 2011, and I called up Rohit Shetty, the Hindi filmmaker, for, I was interviewing various people from the Hindi film industry at that time, and Rohit used the choicest of abuses to describe criticism and critics, and he particularly had an issue with my friend Rajiv Masan. And Rajiv, I'm sure all of you have followed Rajiv, right? So Rajiv had this thing where he would say, this film is so bad, I'm throwing a tomato at it, okay? And Rohit was furious. Anyway, it was a very interesting interview, and because my book is running text, but because this interview was so fiery and he was just so angry, and I was quite amused by what he was saying, so I just printed it as an interview. Now, after I spoke to him during the course of my research for the book, now mind you, Rohit has told me film critics are rubbish, film criticism is rubbish, and at that point in 2011 he's telling me that when he produces a film he will never have previews, so that because he doesn't care what film critics think. And then I went online and saw on YouTube a trailer, a post-release trailer of one of his films in which they had quoted various film critics, including this Rajiv Masand, who he had abused in the interview to me. Not only had they quoted, they had misquoted Rajiv. Rajiv had given that particular film a bad review. He had said, if X thing had also been done, and if Y thing had also been done, and if Z thing had also been done in this film, then maybe it could have been a Diwali treat. Do you know what they quoted in that post-release trailer? They quoted a Diwali treat. So now, you dislike Rajiv, but he's important enough to you that you want to misquote his review. So anyway, as it happens, in 2015, I used to do a column called Film Fatale for Hindu Business Line, and Bahubali was released, and Bahubali was a phenomenon. It was just the way of releasing it. I'm sure all of you remember. It was completely unique. Clearly, Rajamouli had a strategy, and he was rightly angry that the Delhi and Mumbai media are so Hindi film focused. They don't give all other Indian language cinemas the space that other cinemas deserve in the media. So he had a great strategy, released multiple dubbed versions, made sure that in each market there was somebody presenting the film who was prominent in that market. So in North India and the Hindi belt, it was Karan Johar presenting, etc., etc. Now, my column was not, I wasn't doing reviews. It was just a column on, I could pick any theme of that particular week. So I didn't see Bahubali on the day of its release. A few days later, I went and watched it. And that scene in which Avantika and Shivudu, you know, that first scene where he's fantasizing about her, and he sings that song, and he changes her outfit and things like that. And then in the end, so he removes her clothes, puts on something else, puts makeup on her face from the juice of berries in the forest and all of that. And then in the end, they are sleeping together, she's in love with him. So I was very disturbed by that scene, and I was very angry. So I told Hindu, this is the column that I'm going to write. I'm going to write about this. I think part of the reason why the reaction to that column was so visceral and that it went viral nationally, it came as a shock to me, honestly. I mean, I didn't think that, I'm telling you, don't take yourself too seriously. I didn't think I was so important that I should be discussed among, in Telugu language groups, among people who are saying that I'm an enemy of the majority religion, I'm enemy of Telugu cinema, I'm enemy of Southern Indian cinema, and I'm a South Indian myself, but that I hate so-and-so and so-and-so, and I am, of course, abusing feminism, saying the Pope told me to write this piece, etc., etc. And these are like, I'm only quoting the words I can say politely in a university classroom. There was vile abuse, and it went on and on and on for months together. And I think one reason why that happened was because all the reviews came out on Friday, right? And the whole country, all the critics were raving about it. So then somebody comes in a few days later, and I think my column ended up being published 10 days later. 10 days later, someone's spoiling your party, right? And that infuriated them. Now the thing is, by then Bahubali had made record collections, so why should it matter to you? Right? If you think that film critics are irrelevant, why should it matter to you? But clearly it did, right? The reason why, though, it is important for us to respect the task that we have chosen this profession, is that our job, to my mind, the job of a film critic is not to say, go and watch this film or don't watch this film. In fact, even if you're my close friend, if you come and watch me, ask me this question, shouldn't I watch it? I'm a bit of a bore in that I will say, don't ask me, because it depends on your perspective. Jaake read my review. Okay. Our job is to analyze our reaction to the film and explain to the public why we reacted in a certain way. I was very disturbed when I saw that song from Bahubali. Why was I disturbed? That is what I wrote in that column. To me, it was a romanticized representation of a man sexually assaulting a woman, and something we have seen in a lot of Indian cinema, which is that she says no, but she means maybe. She says maybe, but she means yes. And a male, the heroes are conditioned to believe that a woman's no is not to be taken as a no. All right? I was very disturbed. My job was to explain why I was disturbed. Now, over and done with, I am living my life for 10 years. Okay? I keep getting people ask me about this article repeatedly, and it matters a lot to me. I feel so gratified that people still remember it because the apart from the flood of abuse, there was a flood of a different sort from people, especially women, but also a lot of men who wrote to me saying, I was in that hall watching that scene and I was very disturbed and I didn't know how to explain why I was disturbed, so thank you for putting it in words. Or, I was extremely disturbed, but everyone in the hall was enjoying it and I thought, is there something wrong with me? Thank you, because I read your piece and I felt a little less lonely. Or I was upset with that scene and everyone who I went with told me, you're a fool, tum zyada seriously lete ho, what is wrong with it? It's so cute, it is romance, he is so lovely, he adores her, isn't it a beautiful scene, etc., etc. So there's that thing. Now 10 years later, suddenly Tamanna Bhatia gives an interview to a Hindi channel called Lalanta, in which they put up my photo and the interviewer says, एक कमाल की फिल्म क्रिटिक है एना वेटिकार, उन्होंने ये लिखा था आपके फिल्म के बारे में. And then after calling me कमाल की film critic, he sat and listened quietly while she basically implied that I am a sexually frustrated woman who thinks that sex is a dirty thing and that the human body is a dirty thing, and that is why I wrote that article, because I don't understand the beauty of love that Rajamouli sir was trying to portray in that scene. And of course she pretended she's never met me, actually she has. She pretended that she doesn't really know too much about this article, but she's been thinking about it for 10 years, right? Because otherwise what is this badas cheez nikaloin? And you know, first I thought I should keep quiet. Because one of my friends very sweetly tells me, Tamanna Bhatia ko kaun janta hai yaar? So I said, you may not know, but you know, she has, and maybe you're not a serious film follower, but she has millions of followers on social media. That channel also has millions of subscribers. And the point is, you know, if she had just said, I hate this woman, who cares about her, is a different thing. She misrepresented my article. Now, not everybody who listened to her interview may have read my article, right? Not everyone may have read it. They may think, who is this woman who doesn't understand the beauty of love? So I felt that it was really important to speak to readers who have read that piece originally and those who haven't. Because she was misusing her stardom and her platform. She has an absolute right to disagree with me, but she was misusing her stardom and her platform and her reach to misrepresent what had been said by an individual who said it very, she also made it seem like I was attacking her. I had not attacked her. I had written a very professional, detached critique of a creation of Rajamouli. In fact, if I remember correctly, in the Rape of Avantika, I don't think I've even mentioned Tamanna's name. But anyway, I took my time. When I was calmer, I wrote out a very calm rejoinder to what she had written. And of course, I was quite startled. I just wanted to place it on the record, but I was quite startled that also, it got a huge amount of support, and the Gali Galoch of 10 years ago, I didn't get any of that. Okay, a huge amount of support, which I think also shows that the audience has in these 10 years been having many conversations that at that point they had not been able to have, because at that point social media was just 7-8 years. It's not that the audience at that time was not mature. It's not that the audience of this time necessarily, I'm not saying the audience is much more mature than our parents or our grandparents, but the point is now the opportunities for interaction with rank strangers are much more, and therefore the opportunity for a large public conversation is much more. And it was clear from the response to my rejoinder that that conversation had been happening for 10 years. Point number one. Point number two, by the way, the rejoinder itself got a whole lot of media coverage, which was a pleasant surprise to me. Obviously, it's very gratifying. I'm not a movie star. I don't have a PR agency, so that the fact that the media covered it means a lot. And I also think, this is a very sad thing, I'm not sure why she chose to speak about it 10 years later, but a few weeks after my rejoinder came out, Rajamouli released something called Bahubali, the final cut, which was he combined Bahubali 1 and Bahubali 2 and chopped it down to one single film. And guess what he did? he chopped out that entire sequence with Tamanna. In fact, if you look at that film now, Tamanna Bhatia's character is there for just a few seconds. So this young woman who stuck her neck out and said unpleasant things about a journalist who had done nothing to her personally, ends up being treated so trivially by the creator of the film that she sought to defend. So, I mean, for me, it has been a huge learning experience, but I also think that this episode is a reflection of so much that is going on in our society right now. We tend to look at the negatives and we tend to be pessimistic, but my glass is always half full. I think that the maturity, there's a lot of very mature discourse on cinema in our country, and now one has that space where one can, you read some of the things the public is writing online and you realize these are well-informed people who are very serious about films and not taking things lightly. So for me, this whole thing was a very important learning experience, apart from being, of course, very gratifying for someone who's just going about doing her own business, minding her own business and not making personal remarks about anybody, but just critiquing cinema per se.
Thank you. Sir, my next question to you about we have fantastic history of film criticism, right from French New Wave to till date. Ashish Rajadhyaksha is writing very fantastic book. I just want you to make them understand what is the difference between review, analysis and criticism. Because they are students, they will go and write about it, about the cinema. They may pursue film criticism as a career. So, what is the difference between review, film criticism and analysis?
I think it is very basic in the sense, as Anna was saying, like it is about various things could define that. Like for instance, length. For instance, the review can't be more than maybe 500, 600 words. Immediate kind of thing. Usually you have very less time. And you also, if you are a columnist, then you also have certain kinds of style that you follow. People people begin to expect certain things from you, and you develop a kind of style. And so that is why many of these, if you look at the famous columns on film, you can see that they are followed for their style actually. So more than the film that they write about, they're also followed by their readers for their take on it. Even if I watch the film, I may like or dislike it, but I would like to know what he thinks about it or she thinks about it. So there is a short kind of piece, immediate responses, but there's a certain style. It is a certain kind of way in which it approaches, a distinct way in which it presents the film and all that. That actually continues in blogs or in television and all that. Then film criticism as such, you watch a lot of films. There are certain films that stand out, certain films that need deeper analysis, where you take it for you have to analyze it in detail for various reasons. It could be maybe because it deals with a very important theme. Maybe it is a kind of film that, as a film critic, intrigues you in a particular way. It could also be because a certain film has become a huge success. So you want to know why, because it's a kind of ordinary film otherwise, but it becomes a huge hit. So you want to know why. So you're also trying to understand what may be the reasons why it became so. Is it because in any, as Anna said, I would say all films are important because these films in a way reflect the times we live in many ways. And if you look back, for instance, Ashish Nandi said once, actually if you look at Indian history, he says commercial cinema has actually predicted many things that happen in Indian politics. This is slumdiller's view of cinema. He says, all this corruption, all the disillusionment with the system, the kind of violence that is creeping into society. He said all these were actually first predicted or expressed in films, commercial cinema, not art cinema, if you can separate it that way. It's all critics way of categorizing. It's not film is a film. But the, that way, for instance, I would say for me, a good film is a film that grows with you. For instance, you can go back to that film. Maybe if you, for instance, if I look at a film like Pathar Panjali, I have watched it 100 times, but it is not the same Pathar Panjali I watched when I was a college student. Now it has grown with me. It also, I have learned, I've had my own experiences in life. I grow old. Maybe I have matured or become more stupid, whatever, but it grows with me. And also, when I watch it now, there are certain things which I didn't notice earlier gets foregrounded. I will tell you like two instances. Recently I wrote on Sholay because it's 50th year of Sholay. Then suddenly I was watching it again, and then I don't notice certain things which I actually didn't watch before. That is one scene in that film. Everybody used to watch Sholay, and that film is full of dead bodies. I think some 100 people are killed in the film. So, but if you watch the film, when I watched it now, I saw one killing which is very important. It stands out. That killing is not part of revenge. It's not part of the story actually. It stands out. It's not that. It's that of this Ahmad, who is this blind imam's son, who is being killed there. And he's not part of this contest at all. He's not part of the Thakur or the gangsters or anything like that. He gets killed. And he's actually, if you look back at that scene again, it is kind of sacrifice. Somebody is just like a sacrificial goat. He's, dressed up, he's taken, and he's killed. And he's brought back. There's a huge village gathering around it, a lot of discussion about it. So why is that? Like, why didn't I notice it earlier? And why this, murder or killing becomes a turning point in the film? And why do we need that Ramgarh, the village, needs this Muslim young boy to be sacrificed to turn the narrative around? These are the questions which couldn't have struck me in 75. So in a way, that film is, why that film is a hit could be many reasons. The unconscious of the film, that is not a kind of intentional thing. No filmmaker can, intent, or it doesn't, for many of the, if you look at great films, many of the scenes, Suktangar is like, it is not, certain scenes maybe, like certain dialogues or certain scenes, is not, the filmmaker himself or herself doesn't know what it means. It is there because of some instinct, because he wanted it to be there. Then, likewise, the viewer also has an unconscious. You like certain films, and you really don't know why. You really like it, so something enigmatic about it. So, any film critic, any film lover, not just critic, any lover is actually intrigued by certain films. And you tend to notice certain other things. For example, if I like, another example is like Abharajido by Satyajit Ray. You should watch it if you have not. And earlier, I followed Apu, the protagonist of the film. I was fascinated by his journey. Now when I look at it, I was much more struck by his mother's death, that scene where his mother dies. So maybe it's also, the film is growing with me. It is also, maybe I am getting old. So what I'm saying is, a film text, the resonances within that change with time, with you. So that is what makes a great film. So you go back to certain film texts because they are important for various reasons. Maybe it became a huge hit, it is a very popular film, or there is something that still intrigues you. Like this anger that I was saying, it enrages you, then you don't know why, then you go back to it. So there may be umpteen reasons why you go back to a film, and umpteen reasons, unknown, mysterious reasons why certain films live. They just persist in your memory, in collective memory. People celebrate it, people go back to it. So there are certain films which need very deep kind of analysis, certain kinds of different kind of layers to it, and you try to understand it. That is not just a review, it's a longer piece where you are reflecting upon that film, on various aspects of that film, maybe visual aspects and how certain scenes are, certain mise-en-scene is created. All these are things that need, that you take a film as a, or maybe a filmmaker, you're following a filmmaker and you can see certain themes persisting through them. That is what we call an orchard. So I think that's signature things that a filmmaker is obsessed about, maybe, in retrospect. So maybe you're trying to find out what that filmmaker is trying to say through those films. What are the different kinds of themes he's working at, consciously, unconsciously, thematically, and all that. So those are the areas where deeper analysis of the films happen, and you can see a lot of writings about certain kinds of films, certain filmmakers, certain trends. All these are actually what is a new wave. New wave is a term created by critics. You just say this a whole new set of filmmakers come, a whole new set of films come. There's a different look and feel. They deal with different kinds of themes. So you call it a moment. So writers create that moment actually. It's not the filmmakers, more than that. It is the critics who write about it define that moment, neorealist moment, or they defined what are the distinct characteristics that mark these set of films. What is the difference that they are trying to make? What is the kind of responses their films are responding to their times, post-war Europe, or for instance, if you look at Indian cinema, you can see certain kinds of films emerging after emergency. Post-95 films are different. Post-91 films are very different. After globalization, you have different kinds of films. So these are the kinds of moments that needs, if you want to understand it, understand cinema, film history, filmmakers, films in their context and in terms of film history, you need deeper kind of analysis where you link a filmmaker, certain kinds of trends, themes with the times, with the kind of aesthetic, kind of language that they follow and all that. That is much more a deeper film analysis. And then film academics itself is a very, very, if you look at film studies as such, you can see, for instance, the kind of social media responses itself is part of film culture actually. The larger film culture includes these instant responses and all these social media responses are also part of film studies in that sense. Film studies is much larger, where you look at films not as autonomous texts, but as a kind of a construct where a lot of factors go into it. How a film becomes important and how different. Actually, if you look at films studies, history of film studies, you can see there's a huge shift from the text to the viewer. Now everybody is looking how viewers, how these film cultures are created around films, how people view cinema, in different cultures, different age groups, different gender, all these come into play there. So these are, I think, different ways in which one can define these various.
You are more into academics and you are dealing with students, those who are future filmmakers. And they are coming, they are coming to you as a teacher, mentor. So how do you actually tell them what is criticism? Do they take criticism seriously, or do they actually look at it as a career option for them, or they just want to make films?
Actually, what I have observed in this last 9 years of my service, so many students come and we have core courses and optional courses also. In certain batches, I found some students who become interested to film studies since we just introduced the very basic concepts in the initial semesters. Then when it become a little bit theoretical, then few students because they don't find it very interesting, and few students are yet there who loved it and who some of them wants to make films, but in our university what happened, they hardly find scope, and our department is also not very well equipped, since it is a very new university. So that's why we cannot train them in that way. So in that case, I specifically suggest them to go for some institute, but till now no such student I have found that who are that much interested that they go for those type of courses. But of course, criticism, they liked it, And our cultural studies totally looked at cinema from a different perspective with the application of different theoretical tools. So they are quite interested in applying those theories and trying to look at film from a different perspective, where they can explore how women are represented, the needs are represented. So those kind of issues and different movements, different theories, they try to explore it, and of course, many a times I saw in them that they try to write it in a very articulated manner, and some of them are still writing on cinema, specifically on Assamese cinema. So our industry now is growing. So though it is very old tradition, history we have from 1935, we are making movies, but in respect of film criticism, we are still lagging behind in comparison to other parts of India, but we are trying our best. And film studies now in many universities, it has been introduced, though it is not a very not independent department yet. We are studying films either in cultural studies or in mass communication and journalism. And of course, I am hopeful that in near future, few film critics from our department and other departments will come up and look at cinema and analyze cinema from different perspectives. So I am hopeful in that. But till now, I can't say that it is well established, or students are taking it as a profession. So it will take some time. There are so many constraints in this. That's why.
Thank you very much. This is really fantastic discussion. We discuss every aspect of film criticism, right from controversy, right from how you look at the cinema, how you articulate it, and what you need to become a good film critic. So thank you very much for fantastic discussion. Thank you very much. Do you have questions? Yeah, lots of questions.
Hello. Hello. My question is for all three of you. Not academically, but I will be the student of cinema forever. So this question is about most of the films that we see in Bollywood or in Indian cinema are. The question is, can cinema be socially and politically progressive, but cinematically regressive? I don't know if you get.
Do you mean in terms of technique, it is not?
It's not
matching up to standards.
Yeah, cinematically it's like regressive, but I would say, it is progressive. You can say it's a propaganda film. You can say it's a socially progressive film, but cinematically not so good. Can
Sure,
it
of
happen?
course. That happens all the time, where a person might be well intentioned but does not have the craft. And there are some people who feel entitled to receive appreciation from the public because their politics is right. But just because your political views are right, it's pointless if you're using the medium of cinema and you don't know how to use the medium of cinema. So of course that's highly possible.
Do you think in that case marketing always takes over precedence over the narrative?
Okay, I'm not sure I fully understand your question, but I do think that marketing plays a big role these days in bringing audiences to theaters for the first weekend. Marketing also the reviews that get published, but ultimately the long-term impact is of word of mouth of the audience, and the marketing's impact, I think, ends on the first weekend unless, and this is something marketing departments of big budget films are now doing, they use the word of mouth and they make sure that they spread that word of mouth. also sometimes they use very clever ruses. Like there is this Telugu filmmaker called Sandeep Reddy Vanga who made a film called Kabir Singh, which was the Hindi remake of his own Telugu film Arjun Reddy. Now, on the first or second day itself, they started out, and I'm pretty sure that it was their PR that was spreading this claim that Kabir Singh had got all negative reviews from professional film critics. And I remember that evening I was invited to participate in a TV panel discussion, and I realized there were 3 panelists, 3 critics, 2 were actually completely in favor of the film, and there was me. I didn't like it. But this became that film's PR line. So they gauged the word of mouth, they gauged the reviews. They saw that there was a couple of reviews that were very, very angry with the film's misogyny, and they saw that there was some public that were also very angry with it, and they decided to make that their marketing tool. That everybody is, that all the critics have dismissed it. So then, you create this FOMO, fear of missing out. So now everybody wants to go and see it to see if they will also be as angry as. So yes, marketing is, but obviously the financial success of a film is not necessarily a measure of the quality of the film. There are plenty of people these days who will just go to see a film because they want to be part of the conversation at the next party they go for. Doesn't necessarily mean that they love the film. So yeah, marketing plays a huge role in financial success. But I mean, discussions on quality will go on for decades.
Thank you.
There's also a kind of trap that a critic kind of fall into. For instance, he will have all the right political answers, but miss the aesthetic point. And that's not just about the film, because if you look at many films, they tick all the boxes, but they are not good films as such. And it's also a kind of way in which critics, often ideologically minded critics, or then they all look for certain kinds of points in the film. Especially this question of representation. Representation is a very tricky kind of thing, where you look for representation of Dalits, representation of minorities. These kind of things. This is something that the filmmaker easily tick. You create a character who mouths certain slogans. You are right. Okay? So you becomes a progressive film. That is also a danger that a critic can fall into, which we have to avoid. The film, because art is not about being politically right. Art is asking much more deeper questions about justice, about human life, about world, and all that. It doesn't have to fall into these current political, not that it doesn't have a political stand. It's that it's not about being politically correct or not. It's asking deeper questions, not just the questions that are currently in trendy. Suppose it's a question of gender. Maybe asking very deeper gender questions, and apparently gender insensitive for a politically right person, but maybe asking certain other kinds of questions. So that is a kind of trap that a critic can also fall into.
So I would like to add one more point that in this particular question or progressive this audience had a very important role to play in this regard. Actually, if the audience have the capacity to judge a film, or if we do not follow the narrative or the other propaganda messages or ideologies that they are trying to give us, or they are encoding in each and every movie, if we are concerned about, if we are aware about that, and if we have the capacity to negate it or to negotiate it, just what Hall has mentioned, then obviously the film, we will get some films which will be technically very upgraded kind of movies, which will not only go only because it is given by someone with certain purposes, certain intentions, that we can challenge. And for that, the audience and the young generations have to be very smart enough to resist those kind of movies. Then only we can change the trend. Then only we can make films and art forms film is different from other art forms because it has so many scope to make it artistically very high. So that should not be compromised with certain ideologies or with certain forces. So that's why audience need to be very smart in this regard. Then only we can challenge that one. I think so.
Just that the opposite of what you said, a person can be very polished in their craft and use that polish and that talent for very dangerous purposes. And we have to, it's the job of film critics, to my mind, to be able to talk about that, to talk about how that, what is being camouflaged and what the film is attempting to do with our minds and how it's manipulating it. So, I mean, I don't think it's acceptable for a film critic to say, never mind if it was dangerous propaganda, but bhai wah, kya craft tha. Okay, the point is, look at the craft, look at the immense talent, and look at the terrible use to which that very talented person has put that craft. So,
let's just complete that point. अगर हमें पता चला कि इस तरीके से अगर हम क्रिटिक है, अगर हम देख रहे हैं कि इतना अच्छा कुछ फिल्म में उन्होंने क्राफ्ट किया है, ये सब किया है, लेकिन जो उन्होंने दिया है वो अच्छा नहीं है या फिर which is not good for society. So as a critic करके हमें वो चीज़ को पॉइंट आउट करना चाहिए या फिर होता कैसा है कि हाँ ये अच्छा है, ये अच्छा है, ये अच्छा है, लेकिन ये ठीक नहीं है, मैसेज ठीक नहीं है. लेकिन मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि एज अ क्रिटिक मैं पहली बात यही देखूंगा कि ये फिल्म में सोसाइटी में क्या इनपुट देती है, क्या अफेक्ट करती है. दो इट इज वेल क्राफ्टेड, दो इट इज वेल फर्निश एंड वेल पॉलिश एंड वेल डेकोरेटेड, सो मैं उस सब चीज को निगोशिएट छोड़ के उसके वैल्यूज के ऊपर ये मेरी जिम्मेदारी है या नहीं, आई डोंट नो, और आई थिंक इट इज मेरी जिम्मेदारी है कि मैं उसके ऊपर ज्यादा बात करूंगा कि ये कुछ वैल्यू एडेड नहीं करती, सोसाइटी में भी नहीं करती, और आई डोंट नो उनके लाइफ में भी कुछ करती है. सो क्रिटिक करके ये मुझे करना चाहिए ही, ऐसा अनरिटन रूल होना चाहिए क्या नहीं, ऐसा मुझे
मैं ये अपनी जिम्मेदारी समझती हूँ कि किसी भी फिल्म की जो भी राजनीति है उसके बारे में मैं ज्यादा लिखती हूँ. ऐसा नहीं कि क्राफ्ट के बारे में नहीं लिखूंगी, क्योंकि ओवरऑल इम्पैक्ट, क्या फायदा अगर फिल्म बहुत फेमिनिस्ट फिल्म है लेकिन इतनी बुरी तरीके से बनाया गया है कि लोग जाके देखेंगे नहीं, कि वो फिल्म देख के मैं सो रही हूँ, क्या फर्क पड़ता है आपके मैसेजिंग से. तो फिर आप एक आर्टिकल लिख लो, आप सोशल मीडिया पोस्ट लिख लो, या फिर अपना PhD करो. आपने फिल्म को अपना जरिया बनाया है ना, तो उस जरिए का ठीक इस्तेमाल करो ताकि जो संदेश आप देना चाहते हैं आप खूबसूरती से दे रहे हैं, ताकि जितने मैक्सिमम लोगों तक वो संदेश पहुंचे. बट हाँ, मैं कभी नहीं कहूंगी कि अरे दिखने में इतनी हेरोइन इतनी खूबसूरत थी, हीरो इतना खूबसूरत था, क्या फर्क पड़ता है अगर वो इस्लामोफोबिक फिल्म है, या फिर हाँ खूबसूरत है, हाँ इस्लामोफोबिक भी है, लेकिन देखो कितनी खूबसूरत फिल्म है. भैया अगर इस्लामोफोबिक फिल्म है तो मुझे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता अगर कि आपके विजुअलाइजेशन अच्छा था, आपकी सिनेमेटोग्राफी अच्छी थी, क्योंकि अगर आपका फिल्म मिसोजिनिस्टिक था या इस्लामोफोबिक या कास्टिस्ट, तो मैं कहूंगी कि आपने सिनेमा का दुरुपयोग किया है. तो मैं दोनों सभी पॉइंट्स को कवर करूंगी जरूर, लेकिन इतनी मैं इनोसेंट नहीं बन सकती कि मैं कहूँ कि क्या फर्क पड़ता है. बिकॉज लुक एट द कलराइजेशन यार, लुक एट द म्यूजिक. No, how is he using the music? How is she using the music? That's important, because we are all, some filmmakers will say, oh, do you know Rahman in that interview where people got angry with him for saying that there is a communalization of the Hindi film industry, but in some way he was actually defending the film industry. He was saying, aapko lagta hai kya that people are so easily influenced? Arey, we are all influenced, yaar. Even I know that, as you know, I consider myself so feminist, but I'm 100% sure there are things I do say. Once I told my students in a class, every time I say, okay guys, do beep beep, क्योंकि मैं कह रही हूँ कि you must use gender neutral language for a mixed group, but I'm saying okay guys. Why am I saying okay guys? Why are we saying mankind instead of humankind? When a little girl is growing up and she keeps hearing people say mankind is capable of it, is that not influencing her? The vocabulary of our teachers, advertising, theatre, books, everything influences us, but films don't influence. How is that possible? Films are one of the millions of things that we are drawing in, we are seeing, and if a film reinforces all the regressive passive messaging, for instance, that we've got from home and our education system, then it's leaving us with nothing new. But what if that film plants one seed of a thought in the mind of a child who has grown up in an extremely conservative family? What if that film has the power to do that also, right? If one person walks out of the hall with a new thought, makes a difference, right? And my job, of course, I must see how I'm growing with each film that I'm watching, but my job is also to point out a few things that may not be very obvious. And I know that I read reviews by people who are coming from different backgrounds, who have different perspectives, who have different exposure, and I learn from them. Sometimes when I see something made me uncomfortable, and I'm not, if I wasn't going to review the film, then I'll just go and read a bunch of reviews, and there'll be one critic who pointed out, there was this big problem in the way they villainized this particular person, and I suddenly realized, oh, okay, so that community is stereotyped in that part of the country. Mujhe pata nahi tha, but I felt a discomfort. This person helped me understand my discomfort. So yeah, that's part of a very important part of our job.
Good evening, sir, ma'am. My question to you is, what is the easiest job for a film critic? To write and comment about the film which is based on real life or true events, or write on the movie which is fictional? For example, I will give you two movies. One is Bajirao Mastani and the second one DTLJ. So which one would be the hardest job for you to write on it, and what will be the impact of that article on the minds of young youth?
Okay, so very nice question. Actually, if you want to write a review on Bajirao Mastani or this one, the main task of the film critic is to find something where there is nothing. So you have to bring out, you cannot differentiate, or it is not that this will be easy one for you to analyze, this will be a little bit tough for you to analyze, but you have to take one approach, and film criticism is that you have to take into account all the aspects of the film, and there will be your own approach through which you are going to analyze the movie, and the movie, whatever the movie is, but your approach should be very clear, that I am going to look at this particular aspect of the movie, and both the positive and negative points you have to bring out, and both the thematic and the stylistic elements of the movie that should be explained or analyzed from different perspective, that you have to do. So in doing so, the movie hardly matters, but how you are looking into that narrative or that film, that matters a lot. So मूवी कैसा भी हो, लेकिन वो आपको देखना है कि उस मूवी में एनालिसिस करने के लिए क्या क्या एस्पेक्ट है. ऐसा नहीं है कि कोई एक जो हम लोग मसाला मूवी बोलते हैं उसमें एनालिसिस करने के लिए कुछ भी नहीं है, ऐसा नहीं है. हर मूवी में एलिमेंट्स होता है, उसको आपको निकालना पड़ेगा, और उसके लिए आपको इजी है, टफ है, ऐसा नहीं है. लेकिन हाँ, एक बात है, जो सीरियस मूवी होता है वहाँ पे जो पॉइंट्स होता है, जो मतलब इश्यूज होता है, वो वेरी डिस्टिंक्ट होता है, तो उसको एनालाइज करना थोड़ा वो होता है कि हाँ ये डिस्टिंक्टली ये है, ये पॉइंट में लेके वो एनालिसिस कर सकती हूँ. लेकिन आपको डीडीएल से जो है, जो उसको एनालिसिस करने के लिए आपको थोड़ा देखना पड़ेगा कि क्या क्या इश्यूज है वहाँ पे, तो उसके लिए आपको रिपीट बहुत बार उस फिल्म को देखना पड़ेगा, जैसे मैडम ने किया. सो ऐसे फिल्म को बहुत बार देखना पड़ेगा, देख के उसमें चुन के कुछ लाना पड़ेगा.
Ma'am, there is a point in Bajirao Mastani where Kashi never went along with Mastani, but in the film it is shown that they both are bonding together, they both are dancing, and
that is a very common problem these days. So for the sake of the audience or for making the profit, maybe they put put certain things which are not real. So that is done by the, and always it comes into controversy for that matter.
I don't think that there's either is more difficult, whether it's a review of a fictional film or a film that's based on a true story. But if it's based on a true story, I try and do some reading up. But having said that, I think that media organizations also have a certain responsibility because, right, if I'm reviewing Bajirao Mastani or any other film that's a historical, I'm not a historian, right? I can do some amount of reading. But I think it's very important for media organizations, for instance, with a historical, to try and get historians writing about it. Venkateshwaran mentioned this, and I have to say this too, that when I watched RRR, which is the Telugu film made by Rajamouli, there were certain discomforts I had with it. For instance, I thought it was quite peculiar that they're two real-life characters. One was a tribal rights activist who was a tribal himself, and the other was an activist, but he was from an upper caste. And if you see the visuals in the film, there is a certain adulation with which NTR Jr.'s character looks at Ram Charan's character. And Ram Charan's character is the person who in real life is an upper caste person. Now, why is it you're claiming it's a fictional meeting? These two men never met in real life. They're historical figures, never met in real life. Why is it in Rajamouli's perspective, the person who was an actual tribal is looking up to the fellow who was not a tribal? Why? That's his casteist vision of this imagined meeting, correct? So then I went and did some reading up, and I realized that NTR Jr.'s character was a person who had educated himself. He's not an illiterate, and in the film, they show him asking Ram Charan's character to please teach him. Alright? He opts to sit on the floor when Ram character sits at a table and eats. So many little things are revealing the casteism of the filmmaker. Now, why was I sensitive to it? Because I've taken the trouble to do as much of reading up as I can about caste and to also listen to friends who belong to castes that are historically oppressed. But this is not my personal experience. Therefore, I went looking for some Dalit commentary on the film. And actually, for me, the best article on that film was in Caravan, that was written by a Dalit scholar. Again, now every film critic cannot be someone who's had the lived experience of being Dalit. Media organizations should seek out scholars who have had those lived experiences, because however well-intentioned an upper caste person might be, they will not be able to view it in the same way that a person who has been through this has, correct? So while as film critics, we must try to be as sensitive as possible, media organizations should try and get a diversity of voices. But this again brings me to another question. I don't know how it is in other parts of the country, but in the English language film reviewing space, please look at all, in the English language film reviewing in India, in Delhi and Bombay, how many critics are Dalit? How many critics are Adivasi? How many critics are Christian? How many critics are Muslim? There was a time when we had several Muslim film critics. Where are they? Why do we not have a greater diversity? Is this done intentionally? Is it happening organically? We need to ask these questions. And I must ask, as a member of the media, I don't like the fact that I'm put in positions sometimes when, I laughingly said that people are abusing me and saying the Pope told you to write this review, but it's not a pleasant feeling at all. Why is it that I'm alone in this experience, right? Why is it that there are, where are all, Khalid Mohammed used to be a film critic, Nikhat Kazmi was reviewing for Times of India when I entered the profession, Ziaur Salam used to be reviewing for The Hindu. Where are all the Muslims who are writing reviews? Is this the end of this diversity because of the changes that we are seeing in our own society and polity, or is it coincidental? So, these are all questions that we need to ask as film critics and members of the media community, but the audience also needs to be aware and conscious of this.
Good evening, sir. Can you tell a few words to describe today's film industry and Bollywood?
Why only Bollywood?
Film industry, I said, or film industry.
So, okay. Some things have changed in the past 10 years, and I think that the efforts of the Tamil and Telugu film industry have forced the English language media to also start writing more about Indian cinema other than Hindi. Otherwise, the focus was too much on Hindi. I think that it's not possible to comment on there is no such thing as a monolith that is Indian film industry. They are very different industries, they operate very differently. For instance, Hindi has the privilege of having the maximum media coverage, that's free marketing, right? Telugu and Tamil are very rich industries, they're financially very rich, and that's why they have been able to push forward and use their marketing might and force the media to, because they made sure that the public across the country started watching them, and they fought really hard, and hats off to them for that. I may have criticized Bahubali, but hats off to the Tamil and Telugu industries for fighting that fight and forcing the media in Delhi and Bombay, the English language media, the so-called national media, to cover them. But I think that the big commercial cinemas of these three industries, in terms of their male centricity and all of that, are very similar. Marathi cinema, I think, examines caste. Marathi, I think the more like artistic cinema, I'm no expert on the big commercial Marathi blockbusters, but I think that Marathi cinema has given me more of a perspective on caste on screen than any other film industry in this country. The Tamil film industry has mainstream discussions on caste, as in it's, when was the last time you saw a Hindi film that had a Dalit heroine or hero? Whereas in Tamil cinema, it's pretty routine now to have persons from historically oppressed castes as the lead characters. And also chronicling the achievements of these people, not just necessarily Rona Dhona cinema, which conventional thinking is, if it's woman-centric, Dalit-centric, then it must be Rona Dhona. Why? Women, Dalits, Adivasis, everybody has great achievements to celebrate, right? Malayalam cinema, I think, is a little unique right now in the sense that it's an industry which has limited funds. It does not have the money to market itself, but organically, it has ended up growing in terms of getting nationwide attention because the quality is really good, and as it happens, the OTTs came in, and so the public across the country, which was exposed to all of these films, started demanding more of Malayalam cinema. And one film like Premam, which came in the early 2010s, was one of the turning points. Then 2017, there was a film called Angamali Diaries. Then there was Kumbalangi Nights. These are all turning points. And then there was this huge turning point, which was The Great Indian Kitchen, which was rejected by the multi-language streaming majors, international streaming majors. So JioBaby had to release it on an unknown streaming platform, and it went viral nationally because coincidentally at that point we were all stuck in our houses because of the pandemic, and when it went nationally viral, then ultimately the big streaming majors had to get back, and ultimately that film was also released on Amazon. To my mind, some of the best cinema right now, collectively if you look at it, is coming from the Malayalam film industry. But one of the most beautiful films that is in this festival right now, of the ones that I have seen, is a Marathi film called Sabar Bonda. I would urge all of you to watch it. It is such a beautiful film. And Kannada cinema is currently in the national mindset associated with KGF and Kantara. But sadly, national attention has not gone to what I believe is a very interesting indie film movement in Kannada cinema that the public and the media haven't really cottoned on to. So that's something that you can try and follow. Filmmakers like Prithvi Konanur, Natesh Hegde, there's Abhilash Shetty, they make very sweet there's a film called Sue from So, a Kannada film that's now on a streaming platform. Yeah, it's so sweet, and it's nothing. It's none of that dhadam dhadam dishum dishum larger than life hero lower angle to make him look like a giant. None of that nonsense. Tells a rooted story, and the great news is it was a big hit in Karnataka last year. But I feel like there's not enough of a national conversation around that kind of Kannada cinema, whereas there's a big national conversation on Malayalam cinema. So Indian cinema is as diverse as our country is, and the weird part is that our media, as a media person myself, I'll say, our media, by not covering the entire scale of Indian cinema, has ended up for many decades denying our people the amazing diversity and the numbers of films that are being made across the country. But now, because of OTTs and festivals and greater audience awareness and social media, word of mouth, etc., the public is seeking out these films, still not necessarily finding it because still streaming platforms are hesitant to pick up the smaller films. But these are fights that we must collaboratively fight. So as film critics, as a film critic, it is my job to not just review the big massy films that anyway every publication will want me to write about, but to also draw your attention to the smaller films that don't have big marketing budgets, but that I found really beautiful, and I want to say, hey, please go seek out this film if it comes to a festival near you. And I feel the public also, it is a collaborative exercise. We have to, along with filmmakers, push so that streaming platforms are compelled to pick up more of these films in the way the exhibition sector has been compelled in the past 7 to 10 years to pick up films of other Indian languages, which they earlier used to ignore and say, for instance, they would say North India doesn't want to watch anything but Hindi cinema. Bullshit. Don't blame the North Indian public. You as exhibitors didn't want to show Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Marathi, etc., etc. And now the public has forced you to. So as public, we have to fight these fights, and we are not, you and me, we are collaborators in this fight. Happy?
Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am.
Last question.
Actually, we in the biopics or real incident cinema, director uses creative liberty, and sometimes what happens, the creative liberty changes the narrative of the cinema. So, how film critics should look at the creative liberty which director has used to show the cinema?
One thing about this whole idea about film based on real event, real characters, real persons who have lived and all that, the thing is like whatever is written about them is also fiction. It's also a version of their life or version of something that happened. It's not truth, It's only a one version of what, if you write a biography of somebody, of Gandhi, you're actually writing you're picking and choosing certain aspects of his life which you think is important to define Gandhi, or what you think is important about Gandhi. When you write a biography of Gandhi today, you may be picking on different aspects of Gandhi which you think is relevant to our time. So every fiction or whatever is true life event or true life account is a fiction, is a kind of interpretation of the writer, picking and choosing events and moments from his life. So likewise, filmmaker is also picking and choosing from whatever accounts that are available. So he's also creating another version of, another interpretation of a particular event or a particular life. So what a film critic can do is maybe like, you can read up whatever is available, but still you don't aim at capturing the truth of the moment or the person. It's all interpretations. But what we can actually analyze or look at is how truthfully or how nuancedly has he done whatever he is trying to do. For instance, he is trying to portray a particular event or a particular person in a particular manner. How successful he is in making that a very interesting film, where it is truthful would be a wrong word, but you know, it resonates with whatever he stood for, he or she stood for, and is also he also makes it contemporary in that sense, because he's making a film now. So why this person now, and what are you trying to say? So these may be the aspects which a film critic may be looking at.